Thanks so much, everyone, for watching. We've got an epic lineup tonight of speakers. We've got an awesome panel here. Amazing group of functional doctors, technology, activists for a leap forward in medicine.
This is a great gathering.
You know, our goal is to make it easy for practitioners to learn in community. There's a lot of community happening tonight. I want to say welcome to all of the communities that are watching at home. This ecosystem that has been set up by the meetup groups, we believe will be the future ecosystem of this evolved primary care network that we are looking to develop, and it all revolves around you. There's an exponential potential to the future of medicine. This is an allopathic conversion machine that we have just created. And it has exponential potential because it can be seen by 1 billion people at no extra cost. That's the beauty of the internet.
Welcome to the Functional Forum. Thanks for joining us in the charge to accelerate the evolution of medicine. Please welcome your host, James Maskell.
Hello and welcome to the February Functional Forum. We are here in London for Prescribing Lifestyle Medicine. There's a serious buzz in this room right now. 200 physicians coming here for the first Royal College of Physicians accredited course in lifestyle medicine. A lot of young doctors ready to check out the future of medicine. On the show today, we're going to hear some of the best bits from Dr. Rangan Chatterjee, Dr. Michael Ash, and Dr. Ayan Panja, who are the 3 presenters here at Prescribing Lifestyle Medicine. We're also going to hear from doctors who are just getting started in lifestyle medicine and seeing a new future for themselves in practice and seeing a new future for the NHS. It's going to be an incredible hour. I think it's going to be very exciting, and I'm really looking forward to taking you through the whole thing.
And I'm talking to you from the Lifestyle Medicine Conference. And I'm very enthused. I hope you can sense that. It's honestly one of the best conferences I've been to. There's a real kind of feeling of momentum and buoyancy, and it's really genuine, and I hope I don't sound spurious because it's very truthful. One thing to pass on, there's numerous. I feel like I've learnt loads already. But I think there's this really fine balance between this harmony in accepting the complexity of things and also initiating things in a really beautifully simple way. And it's that harmony that I'm coming away with, because I think it can feel quite bewildering. We're learning a lot, and it's a very new discipline. And with anything that's new, it's daunting, but it's so exhilarating. And I feel that kind of exhilaration is really gonna power this movement. So we're really grateful to have this opportunity to be here, and we hope it continues.
To kick us off, here's Dr. Ayan Panja. He is a GP delivering lifestyle and functional medicine in his practice every day. Here are some of the highlights of his opening talk.
My name's Ayan Panja. I'm a GP in St Albans in Hertfordshire. I've been working for 15 years. Come April, I would have been 15 years as a GP partner in the NHS. I have been sort of working by instinct, really, on lifestyle medicine for many, many years, realising that a lot of what we do as practitioners doesn't really help a lot of our patients. And I think deep down, a lot of us as doctors realise this, and this is what spurned this course. What I'm going to do is just run over a kind of an overview of lifestyle medicine, so give you the principles and set the scene for why lifestyle medicine is really important. Lifestyle medicine is a branch of medicine dealing with research, prevention and treatment of disorders caused by lifestyle factors such as nutrition, physical inactivity and chronic stress. That one works quite well for me, and I don't want to get into arguments about what lifestyle medicine is, because there are lots of people in this room that have come from different backgrounds. So I can see people who studied functional medicine, I can see people who work in integrated health, I can see people who work in the NHS. We're all trying to do the same thing, and I see it as a bunch of circles in a Venn diagram. There's a huge amount of overlap. It doesn't matter whether you're primary care, secondary care, we're all trying to do the same thing. We want people not to suffer, and we want them to feel better. And that, broadly speaking, is lifestyle medicine. It's really a public health term, but when it comes to the patient opposite you, you need to bring that public health to that individual to make targeted changes with their lifestyle that's going to make them feel better. So it does filter down to one person. Lifestyle medicine has been around for years. So I've got a quote up from Erasmus from 1520, prevention is better than cure. He wasn't a medic, very clever guy, philanthropist, philosopher. Then there's let food be thy medicine and medicine be thy food by the main man himself, Hippocrates. The subject of sleeplessness is once more under public discussion. The hurry and excitement of modern life is held to be responsible for much of the insomnia of which we hear, and most of the articles and letters are full of good advice to live more quietly and of platitudes concerning the harmfulness of rush and worry. The pity of it is that so many people are unable to follow this good advice and are obliged to lead a life of anxiety and high tension. That is from the BMJ, 1894 that's from. That just shows you that actually we've known about this for a while, but actually the culture shift has moved towards medication and interventions of other sorts. And the next slide is basically about lifestyle medicine now in 2018 and in the media. So I've got a couple of articles on Pulse, and then there's something in the Telegraph by Simon Stevens which says NHS should prescribe tango dancing in book clubs, not a pill for every ill. Then there's an article by Claire Gerarda from 2016 in Pulse, GPs need to start prescribing lifestyle medicine, which we are today. And then Asim Malhotra and some other commentators. The next slide is the medical versus lifestyle model. This is really the difference between what we are taught at medical school or nursing school in terms of how we approach health and disease. So the medical approach is very disease specific and disease orientated. We're forced to make a diagnosis. So someone comes in with symptoms and we are constantly trying to give it a name. So someone comes in with, I don't know, pins and needles in their hands and you sort of think, well, what could that be? And you're sort of generating a hypothesis, but generally it's disease orientated and you want to give something a name, and it tends to go down this specialist route. So it starts with generalists, and then as things work or don't work, you go towards a more specialist approach. And it's based on similar treatments and protocols. So if you take a gynecology clinic, for example, this is a really good example of this model. So there are pathways for patients, whether it's recurrent miscarriage or early pregnancy scanning or cancers, and that will be subdivided into the types of cancer. So that's the sort of conventional medical model, and it's based on symptoms and screening for early detection of disease. Now, the lifestyle model, in a way, looks the other way. It's more sort of health-oriented and preventive. So it's looking for root causes of why someone has symptoms. It's not just waiting for disease to happen, because when it comes to non-communicable disease, that's not the case. There are reasons why those things happen. And guess what? Most of them are down to lifestyle. So what we're trying to do is look at those factors and trying to individualize them, look at biological systems that are affecting this individual, that are giving rise to symptoms, and messing around, if you like, with those biological symptoms using lifestyle tools. It's not just about diet and exercise. This is the next slide. Diet and exercise is sort of the lifeblood of lifestyle medicine, and if it was that straightforward, we'd all be well, eat a bit better and exercise a bit more. It doesn't work for everyone. And beyond food and movement, your mindset as a person, how you relax, how you switch off, what your sleep quality is like, what your environment is like. If you live next to the M1, you're going to have a lot of noise and you're not going to be able to sleep. So that's going to affect your lifestyle, and that will in turn affect your biological systems and your genetics. Increasingly important, and the Royal College of GPs, actually, they have been talking about nutrigenomics more and more, and I think in the future we'll see that becomes a more important part of how we treat patients, and you'll see through the case histories that we have later in the day how that can be relevant. The other thing is that the other thing to get across to you is that list on the left on that slide directly affects the systems on the right. So the biological systems that are constantly at interplay in our body are your gut, your immune system, which is a synonym in a way because most of it is in the gut, your endocrine system, your nervous system, your cardiovascular system, and your musculoskeletal system. So if one of these systems goes wrong, you can bet your bottom dollar that gradually, bit by bit, all the others will start to go wrong. they're constantly communicating. So that's just something I want you to just get used to as a concept. I know a lot of you in this room know a lot of this because you've been practicing like this for a while, but there are a lot of people here who this is completely new to them. So just start thinking about systems and all of those inputs that can affect them. So the two huge target areas for lifestyle interventions, firstly, are not people with non-communicable symptoms, and we'll see in a minute how that presents. And these are sort of often nebulous, people who come in with lots of different things, headache, weight gain, tiredness, joint pains, heartburn, tired all the time. And this approach can really help this group of patients. The other thing, and learning point number 2 in terms of a paradigm shift, is that if you leave these people with non-communicable symptoms for long enough and you don't get to the root causes, they will end up with a chronic disease or more than one chronic disease. This is the kind of thing that is novel to medics because we're just not trained like that. We're not taught about that. And when we learn etiology back at med school, it's often a bit inadequate. And I remember that I used to work for a vascular surgeon, and he nipped out of the room and said, right, come up with the etiology of thyroid cancers. And so we were like, yeah, well, why do people get thyroid cancers? And so I'd written this whole list on toxins and whatever. And he just meant classifying them in terms of papillary and follicular. And I just thought, that's not etiology, that's just what they are, Now that's part of the problem. You get a lot of what and no why. Non-communicable disease is on the rise. That's the point I'm trying to make. And if you go to the next slide, you'll see that there's a list there of things that we see a lot of in primary care. Depression, celiac disease, IBS, food intolerances, we'll cover those later on, connective tissue disorders, endocrine disorders, Hashimoto's, thyroid problems. And I've segmented them there. I didn't need to really, because once you're in this model, you realise that these diseases have a lot in common. And at this point, you might be sitting there thinking, what the heck has schizophrenia got in common with IBS? Just sort of let it wash over you for now and let your grey matter start thinking about why that might be the case. What could Alzheimer's have in common with gastroparesis, for example? Does it have anything in common? Just start thinking about that. Think about etiology. Go back to this thinking about the root cause, the why of the why. That's what we're trying to get to. And think about processes and about systems. So you don't overthink it. Just get used to that way of thinking. Okay, the next slide is the elephant. Everyone's seen this slide. It's just the way medicine is at the moment. So you've got this elephant, you've got a colorectal person, you've got a dermatologist by the looks of it, there's an orthopedic person at the bottom, a podiatrist, an ENT, and a neurosurgeon by the looks of it on this elephant. But the point is everyone's just looking at their bit and no one's looking at the whole. And in lifestyle medicine, it's about what I call super generalism. You're not looking deeper and deeper and deeper because you'll miss the big picture. What you're doing is you're looking broader. You're looking for multiple things that you can tighten up the screws on that makes the whole system work better, because we're talking about systems. It's a bit like Occam's razor. You go for the most obvious things, and you think, wait a second, just by doing this one thing, these 4 things may improve. And that patient's symptoms, often 10 or 15 symptoms, will suddenly diminish and sometimes disappear altogether. So this is not the way medicine was designed to be practiced in terms of keeping people well and getting them better. This is quite an outdated model, but unfortunately how the world of conventional medicine still works.
All right, the energy here is very, very exciting, and I'm here with Dr. Hazel Wallace, Instagram sensation, and doctor as well. Doc, what's today been like for you?
It's been really great. It's been really positive. I've learned a lot. I feel like there's an energy in the room amongst the doctors. Everyone's really, inspired about what we're learning today, and it's completely different to the conventional care model that we're used to, which is quite nice.
Absolutely, you're sort of in and out of the model. Where do you see the future of, you're obviously inspiring a lot of people on social media, you've got a second book coming out. How do you see the future of yourself, balancing care versus that more sort of scaled up role?
Well, I think the junior doctors now are starting to realize that we need to change things and that lifestyle intervention is 100% key, or we're never going to make any progress. So I see that shift already, but I think we've got a long way to go. But just seeing the amount of doctors here, GPs and other healthcare professionals just shows you that we are making movement. It's just slow, but I think the more of us that are talking about it, the more change we can make. So it's just creating that noise, I think, and getting people inspired and get people talking. And there's so many good doctors doing great things at the moment.
Yeah, it's cool. You see, obviously Rangan's got his book, The Four Pillars. You've got your two books. It's pretty interesting how books are kind of almost becoming a part of medicine, because if you see if people execute on that, that's like a long way towards getting better from a lot of these things.
Yeah, I agree. I think the books create that space in between the scientific literature and then the mainstream kind of media. And it's that we're offering that science base, but through a way that's accessible and easy for anyone to pick up and read. There's small interventions that everyone can kind of put into their daily lives. We're not asking for people to make drastic changes to their lifestyles. It's just simple changes that they can do every day.
How cool is it to hear? I'm sure people message you on Instagram and say, hey, this has been super helpful, and I've seen it in the comments.
Yeah, it's great, and it's incredible to see that people are saying that it's actually changing their lives and the things that they're doing. And like I said, it's small interventions, whether it's changing your diet, whether it's moving more, sleeping more, reducing stress levels, and getting that feedback almost instantly via Instagram or whether it's other social media. It's really inspiring and encourages me more, because you don't always get that feedback in practice. So it's really good to see that things are actually making changes.
Absolutely. Well, I just want to say, from my perspective, being on the other side of the ocean, I see you as you were kind of like the first example, and Rupi, of really just taking the bulls by the horns, getting there early. This kind of medicine is going from being like the weird kids to the cool kids. Yeah. And I really appreciate you playing that role in facilitating that transformation. So let's keep it going.
Yeah, awesome. Definitely.
All right, Dr. Hazel Wallace, check her out on Instagram, and let's get on with the show. All right, we are here for Prescribing Lifestyle Medicine. I'm here with Dr. Vanita Patel, has been doing this for a long time, and also a pediatrician, which is a rare combination. What's the energy like at this event compared to the last 7-10 years that you've been involved?
Well, when I first started, I was very fringe. There were not many people doing this. And now to see this room full of doctors who are really interested in doing lifestyle medicine, some of them are signing up to functional medicine. It's really an exciting field to be in now. In
America, pediatric is such a conservative specialty that it's hard to get people on. Is it the same here or not?
It's the same here. If you go into the hospital and talk to pediatricians, they are not interested in looking at anything alternative. They still class it as alternative, but when you start to talk about nutrition, they do get interested. So I've been able to do it in the community, which is where I work, and we run a childhood obesity project. So there I have the chance where I can actually talk to the patients in more detail and go into what's the root cause of what's going on with them.
When you talk to other pediatricians, what happens when you say, look, this is a completely different types of diseases than we were trained to deal with? What happens in that conversation?
They do start to listen, and when I've done it formally as presentations, they do take some of those things on board, and seeing just what I do day to day, which is mostly developmental work with children who have autism, ADHD, those kind of children, I can at least offer them something, whereas the other pediatricians are just making the diagnosis and then they have very little to offer.
Hi, my name's Nina Branca. I'm a GP in Wimbledon and learnt a lot today, but one of the main things I think is sleep. So asking patients, how are you sleeping? So I know we talk about diet and exercise all the time, but asking how is your sleep? How is the quality of sleep? And what can we do about that is something I took away from this morning.
All right, so if you've been watching this course and you live anywhere else in the world apart from England, then there's a good chance that you have a good choice to be able to do this in private medicine. All around the world now, you're seeing doctors starting to build integrative and functional medicine practices. We've had doctors on this show from Egypt, from Estonia, from Brazil, from Mexico. Like, this is happening. We've been to Australia. This is happening everywhere. Now, if you're going to build a private practice doing functional integrated medicine, you have to realize that the practice of this kind of medicine requires a totally different operating system in the clinic itself. You need to activate the patient to be part of the care. And so that's why we created the Practice Accelerator. And if you go to goevomed.com/brochure, you can find out more about it. We have created the most innovative physician community on the planet, where physicians who are interested in the new era of medicine are coming together, learning how to do things like group visits, technology, all kinds of different things that are needed to actually activate a new era in medicine. So if you want to be part of the Practice Accelerator, go to goevomed.com/brochure, download the brochure, get in touch with us. Everywhere in the world this is happening right now, and we are creating a community of physicians who can transform the medicine in whatever country you come from. Come join us. It's going to be a lot of fun. All right, so next up, we have Doctor in the House, Dr. Rangan Chatterjee, and he was well known in the first series of Doctor in the House for reversing type 2 diabetes, not once, but twice. It's not just as simple as diet, and in this next 15 minutes, he's going to share with us what a root cause approach to type 2 diabetes looks like. Enjoy.
I want you to start getting used to the idea that when you think about food, I want you to start thinking about three things. This three-way interaction between the food choices that you make, your gut bugs, and your immune system. They are intimately linked, and there is bi-directional communication between all three of those. So far, so good? So this is very, very important. And this is a great graphical illustration of how the amounts of gut bugs changes as you go through the human GI tract. When you start in the stomach, you don't have many at all. As you go down through the small intestine, the numbers keep going up. And the bulk of those gut bugs are down here in the colon. So what causes type 2 diabetes? I think we're all in agreement that it's insulin resistance is the pathology that's going on behind type 2 diabetes. But what causes insulin resistance? Oh, this is a brilliant paper from 2013. Have any of you heard of lipopolysaccharide? Yeah, a few of you. Let's just take a step back. Most of our modern non-communicable diseases that we're seeing are caused in some way by chronic inflammation. Okay, so very simply, acute inflammation, a good thing. Sprain your ankle, gets red, gets hot, gets swollen. Okay? It helps us heal. A few days later, a few weeks later, it is switched off. That is good. The flip side to that is chronic unresolved inflammation, where there are continuous triggers that put your immune system, and most of your immune system, as Michael shared with you, sits in and around your gut. And it just constantly triggers it, and they're like alarm signs for your body. So I'm talking about chronic unresolved inflammation. The bulk of it comes from your gut, and lipopolysaccharide is likely the triggering agent for the majority of it. So what is lipopolysaccharide? Well, I'm talking about gut bugs. Right? So very simplistically, the bacteria that live in your gut, you've got gram-positive and gram-negative bacteria. And the gram-negative bacteria, on their coat, on their outer coating, they've got a component called lipopolysaccharide. If I was to get some lipopolysaccharide and inject it into you through your vein, you'd go into septic shock. Okay? That's how powerful it is. Now, the effects aren't quite as immediate and dramatic in your gut, but arguably long-term, they're very, very significant. And lipopolysaccharide is fine if it sits in your gut and doesn't come into your body. But the fact that our gut microbiomes are decimated compared to how they were means that actually there's an issue there where lipopolysaccharide is coming into the body and driving inflammation. And on a wider note, so this is why when we talk about food, many of you in here I know from interacting with on social media might be proponents of what is called a low-carb diet for type 2 diabetes. I've also had interactions, I know I can't see any of you, but I know it's always different seeing people than when you're interacting with them on Twitter. But I know that many of you also are not proponents of that approach. And the thing is, you can both be right. Because any diet that positively impacts your gut microbiome, right, and reduces lipopolysaccharide going into your body and triggering inflammation is likely to help you. Now, this is from 2013. I love this. About 75% of the food in the Western diet is of limited or no benefit to the microbiota in the lower gut. Remember, I said most of these, the microbiota just means the names of those gut bugs. The microbiome is the bugs plus their genome. Okay? So 75% has no value to our gut bugs. Most of it comprised specifically of refined carbohydrates is already absorbed in the upper part of your GI tract. And what eventually reaches the large intestine is of limited value, as it only contains small amounts of the minerals, vitamins, and nutrients necessary for maintenance of the microbiota. So just think about that for a minute. Because there's no doubt what is called a low-carb diet does seem to have therapeutic value for many of our patients. Is it that it's the carbs that have gone, or is it that the bulk of the junk food that we're now eating, right, are refined and processed carbs? So you cut those out, you improve the health of your gut microbiome, and you get better. I think it's that, but I would have given you a different viewpoint 5 years ago. This is how my thinking on this has evolved. Because you've got to recognize, and I know there's many low carbers here in the room, and I have utilized what is called a low carb diet. I personally don't like the term because I think we have demonized fat unfairly, and I think we run the risk of doing the same with another macronutrient. So I prefer to talk about the quality of food, but I have used what would be called that kind of approach. But you've got to recognize there are some people who are reversing type 2 diabetes using a low-fat diet. The Okinawans in Japan have got an 80% high-carb diet. They don't have diabetes. Right? So if it is just carbs, we cannot explain that. And if we have time, we'll touch on that later. I think it's very interesting. So I think it really comes down to the gut microbiome. A low-fat diet, the sort of plenty healthy, colorful, different plants, right, can have a very positive impact on the gut microbiome. A low-carb diet, when done well, can also, right? So instead of fighting about fat v carbs, I think there's more to it than this. I won't go through these. This is just reminding you, three-way interaction, food choices, gut bugs, immune system. Again, my take on food over sort of 16 and a half years in practice now is literally, it comes down to processing. And I think this clears up a lot of the macronutrient wars. There's a all good diets around the world, which have been shown to be associated with healthy outcomes, are minimally processed. Pretty much. Minimally processed whole foods, healthy microbiome, your immune system. You'll find out more about this in Mike's lecture. But once your immune system is working well in your gut, you switch off inflammation, right? And that has the downstream consequences on multiple different diseases. Contrast that with highly processed modern food, a disrupted microbiome, immune system completely unbalanced, sending out anti-inflammatory markers, anti-inflammatory cytokines around the body. I'd love to give you 2 hours on the science behind all of that, but it's all there. The science is all there, but we're not changing our therapeutic application with our patients. Low-grade inflammation and poor health. So I spoke a little bit there about what you were eating. What about when you're eating? If you remember in Ian's lecture, he spoke about the symptom web and then thinking about these 4 pillars and how, what, and when. Well, if you're thinking about food with your patients, think about when they're eating. So, Dr. Satyananda Panda, research scientist in the Salk Institute in California, he's been doing a ton of research on something called time-restricted feeding. This is from 2012. Now, this is in animals, and I will cover that in a second. And he showed that when you don't change what these animals ate, only when they ate, you significantly impacted obesity, fatty liver, high insulin levels, inflammation, and really importantly, the calories consumed were identical The only change was the eating window. 2 years later, 2014, he shows again, if you can confine food access to 9 to 12 hours, well, let's just think about that for a minute. 12 hours. That's like having your breakfast at 8 a.m. and finishing dinner by 8 p.m. Pretty achievable for most of our patients, right? It ain't that hard for a lot of them. It can be used as a therapeutic intervention against obesity without, again, this paper talks about calorie restriction. I know many of us are proponents that, if we focus on the quality of our diet, we don't have to think about calories. That's certainly my own personal bias. I don't use calorie counting with my own patients. Again, if someone is using that and they're finding it useful, I have no problem with that. But it's not an approach I found useful. But it protects against metabolic diseases even when briefly interrupted at the weekends. So here's a beautiful graphic to illustrate it. Okay? You've got obese mice at the top. They're giving an obesogenic diet. And at the top, adult obese, and they can eat as much as they want, whenever they want. They become morbidly obese. Then their eating is time restricted. They stay obese, but they become fitter, just from changing their eating window. Then you've got lean mice. Again, given an even more obesogenic diet, ad libitum, those lean mice become obese. Restrict their eating window, they become lean, fit mice. And then very finally, and this is where I think we've got application to the patients that we're seeing, you've got lean mice given an obesogenic diet on their work days in the week, time restricted, and at the weekend they can do what they want. It still has benefit. They're still lean, fit mice. It allows flexibility, right? So some of you might be asking, well, this is all great, but these are animals. Right, I get that. They are animal studies. And human trials are underway. And I got an email from Dr. Panda about 5 days ago or so saying, look, the difficulty in translating this to human trials has been funding. Who wants to fund this? Right? But they've got the funding from Europe, and these trials are underway. And he thinks in 2019 they're going to have human studies to publish. Right? But so far it's looking good. And I ask you, right? Does it not intuitively make a little bit of sense with our circadian rhythms? Can you tell me how this could possibly be harmful for our patients to try as an intervention? Yeah, I don't have a randomized controlled trial to give you. Okay? Do I use it? Absolutely. And have I seen it help patients? Yeah. It's not for everyone. So I just want to show you there is science, and we've got to start thinking outside the box if we're going to help our patients. Was that quite clear? Yeah? This is something basically just showing that in the presence of melatonin, which is the hormone that we know helps us sleep, 30% of us have got a variant in the melatonin receptor, which means that we don't manage insulin properly. So think about that for a minute, and at the time restricted feeding stuff I was telling you. When we should be sleeping with our melatonin levels high, we're not so good with insulin. Right? This is only from last year. It's really interesting. It all starts fitting together. There are many different forms of exercise that have been shown to be beneficial in insulin resistance. And a lot of you will already know this. We know that, as Ian said, right, it's not inactivity. There's huge consequence. It accounts for 5% of global mortality. Is a greater health risk than being overweight or obese. I think what we often neglect to talk to our patients about is muscle mass. So important in insulin resistance. The more lean muscle mass you've got, the more storage capacity you've got, the more insulin receptors you've got. And this is an observational study, but there's plenty out there showing that, that basically higher muscle mass is associated with better insulin sensitivity. So it's just when we're talking about our patients about what they should be doing, we need to be very specific. And I'll show you that in the case studies. Exercise snacks. You've got your own exercise snack in as you move floor. And that was all intentional, of course. We made the whole thing up about the problems we're having. But this is a great study, a very recent study showing dosing exercises, brief, intense exercise snacks before main meals is a time-efficient and effective approach to improve glycemic control in individuals with insulin resistance. If If you have not read this paper, read it. It's brilliant. So your patients who haven't got time to go to the gym, right? They don't have the money. Actually, some of you will know I've got something called a 5-minute kitchen workout, and I do that with my patients, and I explain how they can do it, and I get them into that habit so that every time at dinner, they're knocking out 2 or 3 minutes of a workout in their kitchen. Because, this is a side note, but I've never been satisfied as a doctor giving patients advice, and they come back and they say to me, I couldn't do it, I've not done it. I'm not of the opinion that, they're not doing it, they're lazy. My opinion is I need to do a better job at giving them something that they can do. Right? And that's the challenge for all of us, particularly in compressed time windows in consultations. The challenge is, can we give them something that's relevant to them and they feel they can do? And again, this is sitting versus standing, and how saying, if you're sitting all day and you go to the gym in the evening, great, but actually breaking sitting with standing throughout the day may promote better glycemic control. That's remarkable. Can we outdo the effects of sitting all day by going to the gym? A lot of research is saying we probably can't, so we need to factor that in when we're seeing our patients. Sleep. Critical. I love this quote from the sleep researcher. If sleep does not serve an absolutely vital function, then it's the biggest mistake the evolutionary process has ever made. How many of you slept well last night? Not that many. I didn't, unfortunately. Again, this is another animal study, and we're going to further this understanding later in Mike's talk, but we can know that chronic sleep deprivation, which is endemic with our patients, it's endemic in modern society, increases gut permeability, it increases gut-driven inflammation, it increases visceral fat, leptin levels, the satiety and hunger hormones, and ghrelin, and it increases insulin resistance just from not sleeping. So if you're talking to your type 2 diabetic patients just about their diet, you're missing big pieces of the puzzle. And the way we're going to get them to prioritize sleep is if we prioritize it when we're talking to them. What happens when you don't sleep? Obstructive sleep apnea, short sleep duration, circadian misalignment. Think about how many shift workers there are in society now. What does it do? This changes your biology, right? This changes sympathetic nervous system activation, increases levels of catecholamines. The HPA axis increases levels of cortisol. Oxidative stress and reactive oxygen species, you're going to hear more about that with Mike. Inflammation, IL-6, TNF-alpha, changes in adipokines like leptin and adiponectin. Do we have a drug that does all that? Does anyone know a drug that does all that? Right. So the point is, this has real science behind it, but we've got to start applying it and prioritizing it with our patients. This is showing that sleep can be a treatment, and it can also help prevent things, okay? And there's also stress. Okay, we cover stress a bit later. The important point is stress absolutely plays a role with insulin resistance. And there's good science behind this. And the point of it is, like inflammation, we are well adapted for short periods of stress. The problem is when that becomes chronic. And stress comes in all manner of forms these days. To-do lists, emails, social media, go, go, go. No work-life balance. Who checks emails at the weekend? Work emails. A few of you are admitting to it. I do. That can be a stress. We've lost that downtime. So I just want you to be thinking about these things when you're seeing your patients. Are you familiar with Professor Roy Taylor's work from Newcastle? So he is showing that type 2 diabetes is reversible, and he's doing it with a very low-calorie diet, 600 calories liquid diet. He's showing some really good results. So what does that mean, right? Well, in this paper, he talks about it can now be understood to be a potentially reversible condition by substantial weight loss. But the point I'm trying to make, and these are just general overviews of diabetes, I'm not sure that's relevant at the moment, but the point I'm trying to make is there are multiple ways to use lifestyle to help your patients with type 2 diabetes, right? And you've got to find the right way for them. Because you know what? 5 years ago, although I didn't want to admit it, Roy Taylor's approach does work, right? I don't use it with my patients. I don't have access to someone who can implement that with them. I think you can get it a different way, but it looks as though all these different methods, if they're working for you, impact the same inflammatory pathways. And ultimately, Professor Taylor said it comes down to 1 gram of fat loss in the pancreas. But unfortunately, we don't have a workout yet that can just target fat loss in the pancreas. So it's about trying to find the different methods that work.
All right, I'm here with Dr. Carolyn Rubens. She is the incoming president of the British Medical Acupuncture Society. Doc, why did you come here today?
I was so excited when I saw that this gathering was going to be taking place, and I just wanted to learn more about the specific approaches that I could use, because I'm using a lot of lifestyle medicine loosely, and I'm integrating acupuncture in my work, but I wanted to put it together and see how other doctors were doing it and meet like-minded people.
Absolutely. So where do you think acupuncture best fits inside the overall lifestyle functional medicine framework?
Well, I think it fits really neatly and perfectly. I think it works on so many different levels. Particularly, my background was in anthropology before medicine, and I think I studied in Thailand and China and learned about integrated health systems, and I like the individualized approach that comes with the acupuncture. So I'm quite happy if you've got multiple symptoms if you come to my acupuncture clinic, whereas if it's a GP, it's one pill, one problem, one pill for every ill, one symptom. We get a bit confused if there's multiple symptoms, but acupuncture fits neatly. It addresses the emotional concerns of the patient, rebalances the autonomic nervous system, and generally supports the whole person approach.
Yeah, one of the things that I've noticed is that practitioners or doctors, they just need to go from zero to one, right? It seems like Dr. Chatterjee's show and everything is getting a lot more doctors from 0 to 1. I think we could probably expect them to get interested in things like acupuncture as well. Do you see that this is going to be a sort of a swelling of the ranks in your organization?
It's interesting because we used to have a lot of GPs training in acupuncture. They're less and less so because they're so busy, so we're training all regulated healthcare professionals now. But I think now with this lifestyle medicine coming in and people really understanding we need an alternative, particularly to prescribing pain medication, acupuncture has got such a strong role for being used instead of medication. So certainly the younger generation of GPs seem to be really, really interested in acupuncture.
Absolutely. Well, you heard it here first. British Medical Acupuncture, alive and well. Congratulations on the work. I think this is going to lead to something very special. And check out the next segment.
Hi, my name's Dr. Riley. I'm a GP registrar from Manchester. I find this course really valuable. I think we've all seen patients with multiple problems where we've done blood tests, we've tried a few tablets and nothing seems to work. You're not satisfied, the patient's not satisfied. And I think what I would say to anyone thinking of coming on this course is the trail doesn't have to go cold there. There are other options to explore, and this course has given me the education and the tools to think about that and some ways to assess patients and actually make some interventions that can make a difference.
All right, if you've been following the Functional Forum for a while and you came with us to Guernsey last year, you recognize Dr. Rupy here. He's got a new book called The Doctor's Kitchen. He is an Instagram sensation. And Doc, it's great to have you. Isn't it awesome to see so many doctors coming out for this event?
It's incredible, mate. I'm so inspired by the fact that we've got over 150 people that have come here to dedicate it Saturday to learn about functional medicine, to learn about how we can actually elevate the conversation that we have with patients. It's amazing, and that's largely down to people like yourself and people like Rongan, Ian and Michael pushing this movement.
Absolutely, yeah. Obviously there's lots of different names. You've been more involved with culinary medicine in the UK. That's got its own momentum. What's going on over there?
So with culinary medicine, we're going to be teaching doctors how to cook, as well as the foundations of clinical nutrition, and how that really lends itself towards a lifestyle medicine conversation that we have in clinic. Yeah. So if you can convince people to eat delicious food that is going to be health promoting, we can have a conversation about how mindfulness has these effects, exercise, sleep, and all the other things that build our community and actually have health outcomes.
Absolutely. And your book and Rongan's book were scheduled to come out on exactly the same day, but they moved him a bit forward. How's it been, like being sort of like in the book world now with the new book?
It's, you know what, it's a pleasure and a privilege to be alongside Rongan in this conversation, and the fact that we are such good friends and we can enjoy this moment together is great. I mean, it's quite hard to enjoy it when you have this crazy schedule that we have to like promote the books and stuff, but I think it's wonderful, and I think the combination of these kind of books coming out right now is more powerful than just one alone.
Yeah, absolutely. It seems as though, like, you know, everyone, whatever newspaper you're reading, right? Because there's a lot of different papers in England. Everyone's going to get like a little bit of lifestyle culinary medicine. It's great to see. Well, look, check out Rupi's talk from Journey to 100. It was one of our best shared talks from last year. It was really powerful. Look into, you know, what's driven his career. Check out the Doctor's Kitchen on Instagram. It's a great place to find it. A lot of Instagram sensations in this room too, taking your lead.
Yeah. I mean, like, I'm welcoming, mate. There's so many other doctors, young doctors, older generation doctors as well, that are embracing social media as a powerful tool to get this message out. And I think that's wonderful. We need to encourage it.
Awesome. So check him out on social media. We'll be here all day. Dr. Rupi is rocking the culinary medicine scene over here. Let's get on with the next segment. So this conference has been only for GPs and doctors who are practicing inside the NHS. But last night we had a public event where literally 400 people, made up of people who just love Dr. Chatterjee's show, people who love the book, came for a event to listen on how to get the best outcomes from the medical system. Now, at that event were hundreds and hundreds of nutritional therapists too, because nutritional therapy, functional nutrition has really taken off and has been part of the British culture for now almost 20 years. And so one of the things that we get asked a lot is how can other practitioners get involved? And if you're a doctor and you don't want to take these training courses, but you do want to have access to functional nutrition, what can you do? And so we're really excited to continue our partnership with Andrea Nakayama and Functional Nutrition Lab. She has been creating education for health coaches and non-medical professionals like nurses and people who can't prescribe medication to be able to understand functional nutrition and how to be able to work with doctors who understand it. So Functional Nutrition Lab has an incredible field guide to functional nutrition. And if you go to goevomed.com/FNL, you can see the link below here. You can get that field guide for nutrition for free. And Andrea has been training practitioners for almost a decade. And we need scalable education organizations, and we need the army of these type of practitioners in order to make a bigger difference. So check it out below. If you're watching this and you want to get involved, you want to get educated, you need how to learn the functional medicine operating system, and that's what you can do at the Functional Nutrition Lab. Check it out. So next up, we have one of the leading educators in functional medicine in the UK, Dr. Mike Ash, and he's going to be talking about the underlying causative factors that contribute to the majority of non-communicable disease. Take it away.
So I'm going to try to provide some sort of interface between why these things work and why they may not work, because there's a great tendency to think of delivering care through protocol structures. It makes sense. It's much easier to kind of learn, if someone presents with X, I give them Y. And that process is very much more attractive to many people, whereas what we're looking at is a systems approach, which often means there's no single point of intervention. There's often many points of intervention. And one of the challenges for everybody looking after people who are ill is trying to work out what is the best point of intervention for the least resistance in order to get the fastest possible outcome of improvement. To do that, there's a degree of understanding that I'm going to try and tease out, crushing 3 years of training into the next 40 minutes. There are a lot of learning objectives. I'm not going to read through them except for the first one. You're getting a sense by now that inappropriate or unresolved inflammation sits at the nexus of disturbed metabolic functionality. If the rhythm of inflammation and recovery is disrupted and someone changes their relationship, it has a metabolic effect, which, depending on their own predispositions, history, environment, genetics, can manifest as a disease. Now, at the end of the day, you're not going to be given an exam, but these are some of the questions, of course, that are the best, worst answers ever received in an exam. Now, most people remember homeostasis as a principle in which we are perceiving we're enjoying some degree of cellular and metabolic health. So the question is, what is the definition of homeostasis? And the worst answer was someone who stays at home and does not move very much. And to a large extent, there is a truth in the people that we see don't move very much. And therefore, their homeostatic balance has been reset to a new level, which, as you'll learn, is really creating an inflammatory milieu, that is, an environment that's easily triggered. So Thomas Merton says that happiness is not a matter of intensity, but of balance and order, rhythm and harmony. If we swapped happiness for inflammation, that gives us a sense of the flow, the communication or the dialogue that takes place. And if we're unable to manufacture appropriate anti-inflammatory responses, a reset position, the new dynamic leads to persistent cellular and metabolic dysfunction in the person that we're looking after. Inflammation is extensively written about in multiple journals, and depending on your time frame, we've picked out what we think are probably some of the most contemporaneous ones, that if you feel the enthusiasm is still with you at the end of the day, then you can read these in your own time. But there are many different layers, and I'm going to give you a very nutritionally orientated process working through different systems. And why am I going to do that? Well, first of all, nutrition is a tool that pretty much everybody understands exists, but most people don't know how to use it properly, and certainly most of your patients don't know how to use it properly. And so we're going to give you a sort of a lift up, a skill set that you can leave with today to learn how to use this, because there are multiple reasons why somebody's inflammatory response may become disruptive or overactive, from sterile inflammation due to local cellular damage, autoantigenic stimulation, and in particular a disturbance within the ecology of the organisms that reside within your GI tract. Now, Rongan has given you a clue that the loss of diversity induces a change in capability or functionality. Everybody that you see, everybody in this room, has less diverse bacterial species than your parents, and certainly less so than your grandparents. Every generation going forward, we're seeing less capacity to absorb challenge in the microbial teamwork that you have in your gut because of a loss of diversity. And naturally, as we age, we become more inflammatory. To try and pull all of this together, there's a great quote from Dr. Solomon, which is that clinicians need to become more comfortable with the untidy methodological pluralism which is developing in medicine and part of what today is about, rather than thinking along the evidence-based medicine routine, because knowledge derived from populations remains informative for clinical decision-making, but should no longer be unconditionally preferred. How do we personalize the translational impact of a lifestyle change to somebody who's sitting across the table from you, often frightened, fearful, and generally very poor at remembering most of what you say? So underlying the systems web and the personal profile and the prescription that you're being described today, there are 7 core clinical imbalances to do with defense, energy, assimilation, biotransformation, and so on. And I'm going to give you a very short little overview of each section, but I'm going to concentrate a lot on the immune elements that tie all of these together. There is a constant thread throughout of a series of changes, and there are 3 principal mechanisms that cover all of the non-communicable and many of the acute diseases that you see, which is that there are an infinite number of challenges an individual can experience for which it will result in oxidative stress, inflammation, and immune dysfunction, which should self-correct. But the people that we're seeing are not self-correcting. And there's a limited number of responses which manifest as a range of illnesses and diseases. And if you leave today thinking, what can I do? There's 2 questions I think are really helpful to ask yourself when you're listening to somebody tell you what their problems are. The first is, does this person need to be rid of something? Do they need to take something out of their diet, out of their life, out of their relationship? Is there something they need to take away to help them to feel better? And do they have an unmet need? Is there something that they need to add to their life to improve their health and their well-being? And then if you can think of what they are, often the simplest thing to do is to assign one mutually agreed intervention to start with. So whilst you've had some case histories where there's been a number of things going on, in the time frame that you have allocated, even delivering one intervention that's accepted and acknowledged and taken on board, if you choose it correctly by understanding where in the systems you wish to target, you can still provide a significant improvement. And so I was asked to give a single sentence to describe all of this a few years ago, which is identifying the best target for a heterogeneous collection of patients, that diverse group of people in your waiting room, in whom there's a wide range of diverse immunopathogenic mechanisms are activated, requires multi-layered, iterative strategies to get safe, effective outcomes. One intervention is not going to fix a problem, but one intervention can shift the problem, can shift the dynamic, can change that homeostatic set point in order that the next one becomes cumulative, and then we have that threshold event where after a while they become self-engaging and self-empowered. And if we don't start making our patients self-empowered, this country will be bankrupt. The cost of type 2 diabetes alone is going to cost 2.5% of GDP by 2040. That's just one NCD. We have to get people to take personal responsibility without blaming, engaging, and encouraging to do so. Back in 1933, Walesa said for dysbiosis, which just means a change in the normal relationship between the bacterial species in the gut and the host, cannot be cut out of a structure of life for independent treatment, nor can eubiosis, which is a stable, healthy bacterial mix in the gut, be treated intelligently except in its totality, its all-embracing oneness. That is, the wholeness, the entire environmental impact that takes place within that individual. René Dubois, 50 years ago, said that microbial contributions to health often only become apparent when they're disrupted. When someone becomes unwell and you restore it, do you begin to appreciate the value of a balanced bacteria in the gut in terms of health. Right up to today, in fact, just 10 days ago, in the BMJ, the role of the gut microbiome in systemic inflammatory disease. This is not a new subject, but it's a new way of understanding it in order to translate this into something that gives credibility to your thought process. To communicate something effectively, there must be some confidence and belief in the information that's being transferred. Everybody in this room is intellectually expecting to be reassured by the application of what they do. And that message is immediately translated to the recipient. If you have no confidence, if you have no trust in what you're doing, it won't work. There must be that dialogue that comes from an inherent belief that you're giving information that is valid, safe, and effective. Now, there are 10, well, there are more than 10, but I've chosen 10 for you, core principles for improving immune competence. And by competence, I mean tolerance. And tolerance is a difficult concept in immunology to grasp completely from scratch, but essentially, it's the way in which a restoration from a perturbation returns you to the previous state of healthy, stable immune response. And we produce a set of cells in our body that facilitate that to happen, and we can manipulate those cells through the appropriate selection of foods and food concentrates. A 101 memory for you from those days of what is the immune system. Just very simply, the innate is pre-recorded, it's germline encoded, it's going to be with you when you're born. So we say, well, this is your pre-PLM event. You have a set of responses, they're hard-lined, and they're going to react to certain events. And we're only going to concentrate on the epithelial barriers and digestive function. And on the adaptive side, we have two different divisions, cell and humoral, and this is a learning environment. This can be educated. We can provide it with training in order that it can become more competent. And we do that through a specialized system of cells known as antigen-presenting cells. And that's how we can enter the immune system by providing material to those APCs to change different subsets of cells. And in particular, we're looking at regulatory T cells. Now, these may be a new subset of cells to you, but they've been known about for 18 to 20 years. They're very, very powerful, and they're made predominantly in the periphery, which means in the gut. We make some centrally from the thymus, but most of them are made by their environmental exposure. So you take a naive T cell, you give it an education, and if you give it the right education, it will become a regulatory T cell. If you give it the wrong education, it becomes an effector T cell and sprays defense molecules around. So in very simple terms, the more naturally occurring regulatory T cells we can induce in the patient, the greater ability they have to resist inflammatory disturbances.
All right, we are here with Dr. Zoe Williams at Prescribing Lifestyle Medicine. Doc, best dressed today, I have to say. Yeah, best dressed, best in show. Let me ask you, what's some of the interesting things that you've learned today?
I think I've learned a lot, particularly about the gut, some things that I didn't know, some things that completely went over my head, if I'm honest. But I think probably thinking more about this chronic state of developing autoimmune disease and how looking at a person's timeline, even going back to before they were born, taking that all into consideration and putting that into context when, for example, the 18-year-old girl who presented with feeling generally tired, all those things that sometimes we see in young women and we don't have a reason why. So it got me thinking about the autoimmunity element of what we've learned from Ian.
Amazing. And, now that you've experienced this, how do you see this, the implications of this course in your practice or in society in general, the NHS in general?
I think I've been thinking a lot this morning about demographics of patients, and I think I've learnt so much and it's really useful, but I think a lot of the cases and where I see this being useful is more likely to be useful for those of a more affluent demographic. So I've been racking my brains thinking, how do people who have lots of psychological and social issues going on that can't be fixed with this approach, how can they benefit from this? And I'm sure that they can. So I work with the RCGP as a clinical champion for physical activity and lifestyle, and I'm sort of getting more and more involved in this tidal wave of social prescribing that is about to happen in the NHS. Hopefully every GP in the land will be able to either deliver a good social prescription or refer to a link worker or a navigator who can help patients who have difficult lives navigate the system. And I think that what I'm learning today, I think that they really interlink, and I'm thinking every doctor should be able to manage a patient's lifestyle better. It's something that all doctors should be able to do better, and I wish every doctor would do this course. But also I'm thinking, do we need to be doctors to be doing this stuff? Can we train non-healthcare professionals to, one, help patients who have difficult social circumstances navigate what's available to them in their communities, but also learn this stuff and be helping them with their sleep, with their physical activity, with their diet, with their stress levels, by teaching them a simplified version of this. I think a lot of the slides that I've seen are very scientific and really interesting, but they can be boiled down to very simple messages, such as each one of us will benefit from different lifestyle changes, and how we find out what those lifestyle changes are. There are different techniques to finding it out. Also thinking about sleep, and it's not just how much you sleep, it's the quality of your sleep, it's the timing of your sleep. So there are hundreds, if not thousands, of different lifestyle changes, and maybe if every single person could just manage to nail 20, then their lives would be better. And perhaps we don't need to be doctors to helping patients achieve that.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more. So glad that you're here, and literally you will see when you watch this, this is what we're all about. It's about the minimum possible input for the maximum possible output. There's not an unlimited number of doctors, but there are many, many other people that are ready to help in the delivery of the lifestyle. And you heard it here, April 28th, there's another course coming on, so if you're watching this and you didn't come down this time, you've got to be there next time. Thanks, Dr. Williams. All right, so it's not just GPs that are here. I've got Dr. Ailsa Lumsden, and she is an oncologist currently living in Australia, but back here for this course. Doc, what are your thoughts so far?
So far, so good. It's really interesting. I think it is still relevant to oncology. A lot of our patients, they don't just come with the cancer that they've got. They've all got the other things, the non-communicable diseases that we're talking about today. And they're seeing me on a weekly or 3-weekly basis for treatments, and it's really useful to be able to unpick some of the other things that are going on.
Yeah, absolutely. And what do you think about the sort of the future of this? You know, this being brought out in the UK, and would you come back and do it?
100%. I'm so excited. I've been interested in this for about 3 or 4 years now, and it's obviously faster growing in the GP world than it is in the specialist world. But you know, I think it's useful to all of us as doctors. There's so much to learn. There's so much I want to do, and I'm really excited that it is becoming more mainstream and we can all talk about it more openly and bring it into all our fields of medicine, because there's no reason for it to be, I don't know, against conventional medicine. You know, these lifestyle changes, everyone needs them. And I'm sure if most of the people, a lot of the doctors here will have personal experience as to why they ended up here and interested in this. For me, it was my own chronic ill health that made me interested in lifestyle medicine, because I was able to get myself off tablets, reverse some of my problems with lifestyle choices. And
Beautiful. So we've got such a range. I met psychiatrists, rheumatologists, oncologists, not just the GPs. It's a new era in medicine. Thanks so much for participating. We hope to see you back and saving the NHS sometime soon. We are here with Dr. Kadi Helme. She is a doctor from Estonia. Hey, Doc, tell us a little bit about your practice, how it is right now.
And I'm practicing in a new nutrition clinic where we work GPs together with nutritionists and nutritional doctors. So it's all a team working for the benefit of a patient.
Is it the first practice of that variety in Estonia?
Yes, it's the first one. I guess me and there's another doctor who are the first ones trying to put it together, because it's still new. It's very new in Estonia.
Absolutely. So what are the kinds of chronic diseases that are in Estonia that you see a lot?
A lot of gastrointestinal things. Definitely that's one of the main things that I focus on. The other doctor that I'm working with, she's more focusing on cardiometabolic syndrome and diabetes, definitely. It's the same like in everywhere else.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, I mentioned, we were talking a little bit before, Estonia's a little bit ahead of the game on technological innovation. Are you using any interesting tech in your practice for access or affordability or connection?
So the GPs in Estonia have, I would say, a program that we use where we enter all the information into computer and all the GPs can see it, and we also send it to a kind of a network where every other doctor could see what we have been prescribing, what are the symptoms, and what we decided to do. So it's all in common. Every doctor that the patient will see later will see the information that we wrote. And we also have this e-digital recipes, so we prescriptions. So when we prescribe something, then we don't fill a paper anymore. So what we do is that we just send it in the via system.
That's amazing. Look, I've said before, you know, in Estonia, they're way ahead of every other country in actually running the government with technology. So I'm not surprised that you guys are doing it better. What's it like to come and see the energy of this event and see all these young doctors coming out for a new era in medicine?
Yeah, it's incredible. There's the one thing when you work on the field in Estonia, you're the only one, or there are 2 or 3 people who are actually on the same, having the same idea about how the body works. So if I come here, it feels like home, you know? Everybody's in the same vibe, so I love it, I love it.
So can we hope for a functional forum meetup group in Estonia in 2018?
Absolutely, I would love to be part of that.
All right, field trip to Estonia, everyone's invited. It's going to be an incredible year. So there is so much excitement, you can hear it behind us. I'm here with the guy who kicked off the conference, Dr. Oyen Panja. He is spending more time than most in the NHS. So Oyen, how exciting is it to see just so much energy here today?
Unbelievable. I mean, we were nervous that people may not turn up, people are busy, it's on a Saturday. Look at this. I mean, we have got a room full of talent. We've got a room full of people that want to make change through lifestyle medicine. Beyond my wildest dreams. This has been great so far.
So you're doing most of this in the GP setting every day. What are some tips in the way that you've been able to do it not in private practice and in just in day-to-day practice in the NHS?
I think the thing is to try and make sure that you're looking at the person as a whole, looking at why they've got symptoms. You know, the conventional medical model is about symptoms, and actually those symptoms relate to biological systems. So as a doctor that sat opposite a patient who's broken and is not working or functioning properly, you have to try and look at factors that are in their life that you can mess around with, what they're eating, how they're sleeping, how they're exercising. Very simple things that can have a massive effect on their symptoms, and that's all this is.
One of the things I've been really excited to see is how Rongan's book actually fits into what you're talking about. I mean, it's almost like a manual for the lifestyle delivery. Nice to have those kind of assets available, and then you can give them Rupi's book for cooking. I mean, there's content that's scalable, right? And this is actually kind of medicine, right?
That's exactly right. I mean, Rongan's 4 Pillars, absolute genius. Rupi is teaching culinary medicine. I mean, there is a massive sea change. And these off-the-shelf kind of packages, like the 4 Pillars, for example, everyone should know about them, because if everyone did them, we'd all feel better. And that's what this is all about.
Absolutely. So, Jeremy Hunt, if you're watching, order a few copies, give it out to everyone for free. That's the future of medicine right there.
My name is Dr. Sunil Menon. I'm a practicing physician in India. I work in a charitable hospital that basically looks after patients from a rural area. Back home in India, we do know a little bit of lifestyle medicine. It's been there, practiced a long time ago in Ayurveda. But unfortunately, today conventional medicine has taken over, and people have moved on to coming for help in hospitals where conventional medicine is practiced. But coming here, I realized that lifestyle medicine works, and what the ancients in India have been saying a long time ago is actually true. The way you live, the way you eat, how stressed you are, the food sources, the nutrients in them, and after all, the gut-brain axis and the microbiome. All this was partly recognized in the ancient Indian method of treating human beings with Ayurveda and herbal medicine, but not practiced frequently in conventional hospitals. And when I came here, I came to get the scientific evidence of what the science has to say, and I was surprised to find out that the science has caught up. And today we are getting the relevant information where we can examine the patient, do the lab tests, and come to a conclusion. But the surprising things I learned was simple interventions do work. And you don't have high-tech medicine to be practiced to give relief to the patient. And preventable medicine is the future of medicine tomorrow. And I'm extremely happy to be here and get convinced that what the ancients in India said was really true. Thank you.
I've been going to functional medicine courses for the last 10 years, and this has been by far the most inspiring and well put together course that I've ever seen. The energy in the room has been incredible, and for someone who grew up in the UK, it's amazing to see just how much the energy is moving forward in this country. So next month's Functional Forum is called A New Vision for American Medicine. But while I'm here in front of the Houses of Parliament, I want to give a new vision for the NHS. And this video is directed at you, Jeremy Hunt, head of the NHS, Secretary for Health. We have a serious problem. If you heard it here today, we have a serious problem with non-communicable disease here in the UK and in the NHS. And so what I want to share with you today is my vision for how we could deal with this in the most effective way. We have 200 doctors here. There's probably 300 or 400 doctors in the country now who are capable of doing root cause resolution medicine. There's going to be another event coming up soon, but we're building the ranks. But in the meantime, there's also thousands and thousands of nutritional therapists that have been training for a long time to be able to deliver on the lifestyle medicine at a fraction of the cost of these doctors. So here's my vision. Just give us one disease type. Let's start with type 2 diabetes. As Mike Ash said earlier, by 2040, if we don't move in a different direction, it's going to cost 2.5% of GDP, one disease type. We're moving to an American situation where, in America today, 20% of GDP is going to medicine. It's not sustainable. So here's what I reckon. We are going to use the integrative functional medicine community to be able to deliver on type 2 diabetes. So the first layer of care that we're going to provide is data, so that we can show you that this is working. And we're going to get people off metformin. We're going to reduce the cost of drugs. You know that these patients are taking up a disproportionate amount of the budget of the NHS because they're on drugs for a long period of time. So we're going to put a nutritional therapist in everyone's pocket. We're going to be able to create a structure where the lifestyle part of this medicine is delivered through through telemedicine with nutritional therapists and practitioners, helping to instigate exactly what you've seen today. And then for those patients who aren't making progress, and we know that they're not making progress because we're getting the data to be able to see what's going on, then and only then do we take them to one of these chronic disease root cause resolution specialists. This is a way to be able to use the most effective practitioners at the least cost, the least costly, the least invasive interventions first, and then working up towards the doctor. We don't have an unlimited amount of time of doctor hours, but there are other practitioners who are ready to work. This can save the NHS. We're going to start with type 2 diabetes, and then we can move on to autoimmune diseases like Crohn's, colitis, and those diseases that have the most expensive drugs. So if you're listening to this, Jeremy Hunt, Rongan, Ian, myself, and Mike, we'd love to meet you for coffee. We'd love to take you out and talk to you about how we can use lifestyle medicine, functional medicine to save the NHS. It's about time. Look, in America, doctors don't care. They leave the system, they hang their shingle, they do their own thing. These doctors in this room, they don't want to step out of the NHS because they care about saving it. You've got people who really care. This is a group of people that you need to engage to save the future of the NHS, and we're ready to help you if you would just reach out. So you can find me at functionalforum.com. Look forward to hearing from you, Jezza. We'll see you next time.